Good afternoon and welcome to today's presentation, Understanding Safety Light Curtains with Schmersal. My name is David Schucker. I'm Marketing Coordinator for Schmersal in the US. So without further ado, let me get to introducing today's presenter. Dawn Etta is our Senior Application Engineer with more than 25 years of dedicated service at Schmersal USA. She holds a Bachelor of Engineering in Electrical Engineering and is a TUV certified functional safety engineer. Additionally, she is a TUV Rhineland certified machinery CE expert. So you are in very good hands today. Her extensive experience and expertise has been instrumental in advancing internal education and safety training initiatives within our company. So Dawn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David, and thank everyone for coming and joining us today as Schmersal presents Understanding Light Curtains. Our agenda today will include the basics of light curtain operation and key terminology, applicable safety standards that govern their use, common questions to qualify an application and help select a light curtain, some simple maintenance tasks to take care of said light curtains, some light curtain functions and advanced features, an overview of our Schmersal product range, including some standard and advanced models, what we have to offer with regards to advanced diagnostics using Bluetooth connectivity and our Schmersal SLC Assist App, some typical applications and real use cases, and how Schmersal can support your safety application from selection to commissioning. So safety light curtains, they are a viable safeguarding option for point of operation or for perimeter guarding. They provide a non-separating barrier that will detect operators trying to access hazardous machines and areas. So it's a pair, we sell them as a pair, an emitter and a receiver. That emitter is sending an infrared beam of light that's non-visible. Whenever you look at graphics and graphical representations of light curtains, you'll always see these red beams. But that's just to provide some clarity as to how it operates. But these non-visible infrared beams of light are going to be sensed by the receiver, validating that those beams are not interrupted. And so once an object or an opaque object enters the beam, they're interrupted, the redundant safety circuit is disabled, causing the hazardous process to come to a halt within milliseconds. That process can only be restarted after the safety light curtain is cleared of the blockage and is reset. So it's providing non-separating guarding. It does not provide a physical barrier, does not mitigate or reduce the severity of the hazard, and only reduces the risk by stopping the hazard before it can be reached. So some terminology to look at. A single light beam or a single beam system is usually called an SLB or a single light beam, as we use in our nomenclature, and that will be used to detect larger objects, primarily used for perimeter guarding. Then you can have your 2, 3, or 4 beam system, and that's typically called a safety light grid. With our nomenclature, we start our series off with SLG, and that is typically used to detect whole bodies, and typically used for perimeter guarding as well. And then you have your multiple beam array system, and that is usually typically called your safety light curtain. And that's going to detect finger, hand, or whole body. And this is used for point of operation. So typically you can utilize typical light curtain, light grid, and light beam applications are for point of operation or for perimeter guarding. And you'll see that throughout the presentation today. The resolution is the distance between adjacent beams and the size of the object detected. So when you speak of 14mm resolution, typically for point of operation, you're detecting fingers and other small objects. The 30mm resolution for point of operation, for detecting hands and similar sized objects. And when you move up to 35 to 40 millimeter resolution, still applicable for your point of operation applications. And here you're detecting arms or other larger objects. Anything that's 50 millimeters or greater, that's where you're typically going to detect legs, whole body, or other larger objects. And that will be limited to perimeter guarding applications. The protection field, that's the plane in which those infrared beams travel from the emitter to the receiver that will detect an object passing through. It's also, so that's your protected field, also known as the protection area or active area. And so the protected height is the distance between the first and the last, the top and the bottom beams. Most manufacturers will indicate this height in their part number, as do we. The length can vary from a minimum of 6 inches to upwards and over 6 feet tall, protected height. Keep in mind that's the measurement between the beams, and so the actual housing will add some dimension to that, and so typically the housing and the entire height of the overall device will be longer, physically longer than the protected height. The range, that's simply the operating range or the sensing distance between the emitter and the receiver. And that can vary greatly as well, dependent upon your resolution and dependent upon the device that you're looking at. Our current units can range from a close 12 inches of sensing distance to upwards of over 65 feet maximum, depending upon the resolution and other factors. You want to ensure that the protected field should be of sufficient height and width, so that range, the protected height and the range, so that operators cannot reach over, reach under, or go around to reach the hazard. If so, additional hard guarding should be installed to prevent access. Some general international consensus standards that are applicable to light curtain applications. You have EN 61496-1, which is your safety of machinery, electrosensitive protective equipment, general requirement and tests, as well as Part 2, particular requirements for equipment using active optoelectronic protective devices, AOPDs. In addition, you have your ISO 13849, the safety of machinery, safety-related parts of control systems, general principles for design, Part 1, and IEC 61508, which is your functional safety of electrical, electronic, programmable, electronic, safety-related systems, general requirements, Part 1, as well as your ISO 13855 and 13857, which will contain safe distance calculations. So safety of machinery, 13855 is the positioning of safeguards with respect to the approach speeds of parts of the human body. And 13857 is the safety of machinery, safety distances to prevent hazard zones from being reached by upper and lower limbs. There are 2 types of safety light curtains as defined in IEC 61496, determined by how they perform. A risk assessment based on ISO 12100 or a similar standard should be performed to determine which type is necessary and needed for the application. Additionally, utilizing safety standards like IEC 61508 and ISO 13849, which evaluate the safety functions of machines, they can be used to define a sill level or performance level, which will also determine the required type of the light curtain. And so the 2 types are type 2 or type 4. Type 2 will feature a periodic self-test, which might experience a failure in between the test cycles. They would be used for lower risk situations up to a sill 2 or performance level C, and typically feature a large sensing distance and are considered a lower cost solution. Type 4 will feature an active self-testing, so the self-checking, self-monitoring that happens throughout the entirety of operation, and will have a higher tolerance to faults. They're used in high-risk applications and will meet the requirements for the highest safety levels of SIL 3 performance level E. So for proper placement of the light curtain, safety distance calculations need to be performed. The safety distance is that minimum distance between the protected field of the safety light curtain and the hazardous area. And that safety distance between that light curtain or grid and the hazardous point must always be respected and observed. If a person were to reach the hazardous point before the hazardous movement has come to a standstill, he or she is exposed to serious injuries. To calculate the minimum distances of the safety guards with regards to the hazardous point, you're using ISO 13855 and ISO 13857. So again, to remind you that 13855 is the positioning of the guards with respect to the approach speeds of parts of the human body, and 13857, the safety distances to prevent hazard zones from being reached by upper and lower limbs. So looking at, for example, here, you're looking at the direction from which the hazardous area is accessed, and the safety distance is to the hazardous point. So that safety distance takes the total reaction time, your machine run-on time, your reaction time of the safety guard, and the safety controller, and contactors, et cetera, and utilizing the resolution of the safety light curtain, you can then determine the safe distance for the placement of that light curtain. Through our technical engineering safety services, we can provide the technical planning and engineering necessary to help customers calculate that safe distance for various guarding systems that will include light curtains. Choosing a light curtain, a safety light curtain, safety light grid, safety light beam, not terribly complicated once a thorough risk assessment has been performed. Besides identifying the hazardous process, the risk assessment helps answer vital questions, some of which are listed here, but primarily it's what, so, have you performed a risk assessment or stop time analysis on the machine to determine those conditions so that you can make that calculation? What are the hazards that are present on the machine and the typical access that is required by the operator? What is the environment the light curtains will be in? Is it dusty? Is it moisture? Is it cleaning chemicals? Is it high pressure hot water IP69 environment? Is it a hygienic environment in the food and beverage and pharmaceutical industry? What's the range? How far apart will the emitter and receiver be mounted? What's the height of the area needed to be guarded? Will the light curtain simply be performing an on-off function in the application? Or do you need to blank out any area of the light curtain itself for machine parts or parts that are being processed? Or do you require the light curtains to perform a muting function? So looking at all of those types of questions, you're basically looking at what level of reliability is needed. Is it type 2 or type 4? What size of object is to be detected? So what's the resolution? What's the size of the opening? So what's your protected field and the range? And are there any special operating modes that are necessary? So those special functions to consider. And once you've installed your light curtains, there are specific maintenance requirements to maintain the integrity of your light curtains and to maintain the life of your light curtains and light grids and light beams. Regular inspections, a regular visual inspection and functional testing, including the steps listed here, that there's no visible damages, that the optic cover is not scratched, and you want to clean it with a soft cloth with low pressure on the light curtain enclosure itself. Any hazardous machinery parts can only be accessed by passing through the detection zone of the light curtain, grid, or beam. The staff remains within the detection area when works are conducted on hazardous machinery parts, and the safety distance of the application exceeds the mathematically calculated one, as well as a half-yearly inspection where every 6 months you should be looking at if the machine stops or does not inhibit any safety function, no machine modification or connection change, which might affect the safety system, has taken place. The outputs of the light curtain are correctly connected to the machine and not jumped out. The total response time of the machine does not exceed the response time calculated during the first commissioning, and that the cables, the connectors, the caps, and the mounting angles are all in perfect working condition. So now we're going to look at some special AOPD functions, some special functions of light curtains in general, not just unique to Schmersal, but the following slides that we'll talk about are just special functions of typical light curtains, or your AOPDs, your active optoelectronic protective devices. A little easier to say AOPD. So you've got blanking, and typically you'll see two types of blanking. So blanking is when certain beams are disabled to allow items to kind of pass through. Blanking can be fixed or floating. Your fixed blanking, certain beams are disabled in a fixed location, and so that allows a fixed structure to be within the light beam array without shutting down the equipment. If that structure is removed, the light curtain will go into a fault mode. Your floating blanking allows for an object that's larger than the minimum object resolution to pass through the light curtain without shutting down the outputs. The floating blanking can move based on the movement of the material, provided that no more than the specific number of beams is interrupted. So that allows a random set of adjacent beams to be interrupted without stopping the machine. For example, if you have any material projection. However, with blanking, especially with floating blanking, you're effectively changing the resolution of the light curtain. So when you're introducing blanking into the application, new minimum safe distance calculations will have to be performed once those blanking and floating blanking functions are activated. Muting. Another special light curtain function is muting. So muting will temporarily turn off the protected field to allow the regular passage of material into or out of the hazardous area. Additional sensors placed before and after the curtain are monitored to verify that a transport system is passing and not a person approaching the hazardous area. Muting can be adapted to allow for different solutions for different sizes of objects, partial muting, variable transport speeds, material loading with gaps, or unforeseeable belt stoppages. In this example I'm going to show you, it's muting using two beams, so two beam bidirectional muting. So here the muting is temporarily disabling the protective field to permit material and parts to pass without interrupting the process or equipment. Muting can be performed with either 2 or 4 beams, 2 or 4 sensors for material entering or exiting a dangerous area. The following example here will show 2 beams that show a configuration that can allow muting in both directions. And we're going to witness the fact that the size of the pallet is regular, the muting sequence is correct, and the pallet can pass through the light curtain. However, if you have muting with where the width of the pallet is much less than the conveyor width, and the pallet's not centered on the conveyor, the muting sequence will be wrong. So the system's not in the position to distinguish the material from the operator, and a fault occurs because the light curtain is interrupted before the proper muting sequence was triggered. Here again, the width of the pallet is much less than the conveyor width. The muting sequence will be inaccurate because we're not in the position to distinguish the material from the operator. The fault occurs because that muting sequence is not ended correctly, and the emergency stop command is given to the machine. So here is another application of 4-beam bidirectional muting. Again, here the pallet width is regular. The muting sequence will be initiated correctly, and the pallet can pass through safely, but still detect if an operator was trying to gain access to the hazardous area. This is the proper muting sequence for 4 sensors. Here, the length of the pallet is less than the distance between the 4 sensors, sensor number 1 to sensor number 4. So because the muting sequence is incorrect, again, we're not in the position to distinguish the material from the operator. The fault occurs because the proper muting sequence is not triggered, and the emergency stop command is given to the machine. So the following few slides are now going to show some functions that are special to Schmersal light curtains. The previous muting examples had shown defined material interruptions on a pallet. Most light curtains, the sequence that we're showing here, will result in a fault. This muting feature, which we're calling muting with material gaps, allows the pallets to pass through even if the material it carries does not create a solid interruption of the muting sensors. So here, a special Schmersal function is muting with material gaps. We can go even further and offer palletless muting. So another unique feature to Schmersal safety light curtains is palletless muting, where we allow material to pass in various and random intervals as long as the proper muting sequence is followed. So special considerations and timing have to be followed when you're offering palletless muting. And here we are with partial muting. So we've got Johnny come lately who thinks he's going to take a ride on the pallet, and this will allow only part of the protective field to be disabled once muting is enabled. But yet, we'll still detect Johnny come lately who's trying to check out the robot inside. So again, another special Schmersal function is your partial muting. So part of the protected field is disabled once muting is enabled. Another special feature is forklift muting. By utilizing 2 inductive loops buried into the ground, they can provide inputs to trigger a muting sequence for forklift muting. So here with our safety light curtains, you'll be able to offer forklift muting. Multiscan. So multiscan prevents forced trips or unintended stop commands. So in essence, that light curtain is scanned multiple times to see if the interruption is still there. So multiple evaluations of that protective field, which would allow the smaller material debris, steam clouds, or even insects to pass through the field without triggering a machine stoppage. But again, here comes Johnny come lately. It will detect him leaning in, but did not pick up and detect the material being created as they're cutting up this piece of timber, this piece of log. So this is going to allow you to increase machine productivity and availability by limiting the number of false stops associated with temporary disturbances. However, the light curtain will still prevent your operator from passing into the hazardous area. I thought I would let that run through one time before I talked. It's also quite loud. This is cyclic operation or cyclic mode, also known as presence sensing device initiation. So that allows the interruption of the light curtain array to trigger a machine cycle, allowing the light curtain to be used as a machine control device. So the programming of the machine expects that protected field of the light curtain to be interrupted between machine cycles to either place the item or remove materials, or maybe to make an adjustment. So the machine will initiate the next cycle once the beams are restored. That function should not override the primary function of the light curtain. If the protected field is interrupted during the machine cycle, the hazardous motion is stopped and the machine is put into an interlocked state until the safety has been reset. The example that I'll play again shows a cyclic operation of one interruption. So the light beams will be interrupted once before a machine cycle is initiated. You'll notice that the fault occurs when he pops in a second time during an active cycle. So I'll play that again. So that's your cyclic operation, or your cyclic mode, or your presence sensing device initiation. Another special feature is double reset. The double reset is going to prevent the restarting of equipment when you lose full line of sight and someone is within the danger zone. This can be used in place of presence sensing devices such as safety mats and laser scanners. So the example here, once the light curtain has been interrupted and someone goes inside of the robotic cell, the hazardous area, but if you lose line of sight, the inside switch number 2 needs to be reset inside the hazardous area to verify the beginning of the reset sequence. And then the beam needs to be interrupted, so he has to walk through the opening with the light curtain. And so that indicates that the person has now exited the hazardous area. And S1 is reset, the switch reset button S1 is reset outside the area to activate the safety light curtain, providing another level of safety. And there's timing that's incorporated into this sequence and can be adjusted. So there's a limited amount of time between initiating step number 1 on the inside, which is switch 2, and step number 2, which is switch 1 on the outside. So this video will give you a demonstration of that. We lose line of sight of Johnny come lately. And so thankfully no one can reset the robot because he is still inside, and that requires that double reset action. Another special Schmersal function is fixed blanking with movable edge detection. So now you can allow fixed structures to be within the light beam array without shutting down the equipment. The fixed structure is allowed to interrupt the beam above or below the programmed blanked field. So if you have vibrations on a piece of equipment, and that light curtain will go into a fault mode if that fixed structure is removed. So now moving on to the Schmersal's product range of our light curtains, light grids, and light beams. Some key mechanical design features. When you compare the Schmersal designed light curtain housings to the competitor's design, it's an extremely robust unibody construction. So it's a closed, uninterrupted profile. So there's no torsion or bending. It's a one-piece extruded reinforced housing. So we have all 4 sides, a unibody construction, and then we add the lens. When you look at the competitor's design, they have 3 walls, and the 4th wall is the lens. So therefore, their housing has to be thicker, which makes it heavier, and still will allow it to bend and have torsion because of the mechanical weakness of only having the 3 walls plus the lens. And because we have the unibody construction, that allows for a thinner wall thickness. So our light curtains are lighter than conventional light curtains, allowing them to have that compact 28 millimeter by 30 millimeter rectangular profile. Our standard light curtains also have a higher than industrial norm protection rating of IP67, where you're totally protected against dust and you're totally protected against the effects of immersion between a centimeter and a meter of water. So looking at our single light beam, we have a type 2 or a type 4 variant. The type 4 can obviously meet up to category performance level E, SIL 3, IP67. There is an IP69 housing available. It's a single beam. You still will have an LED status end cap, a very compact design, a high range up to 75 meters on your SLB 440 series, the ability to wire directly to the light beam receiver for automatic reset or manual reset. A very sturdy that unibody enclosure, so it's the same enclosure as our light curtains, it's just a single light beam. Minus 30 degrees upwards of plus 55 degrees. And there's a version with a heater only available with the high range option for outdoor applications. So these will be used in processing centers for assembly and handling, as well as in the timber, paper, print industry, high shelf warehouses or packaging machines, especially in those warehouses. Please, they pop up everywhere on the when you're driving along any of the interstates. Shelving overhangs, any access protection, slots and edges and small openings, height detections, detection of objects to protect against crushing. There's also that 75 meter can also, there's a reserve 90 meter higher, longer range available once the high range version has been installed. So just something to consider for perimeter guarding and for industrial warehouses and things of that nature. So we offer our SLC and SLG 440 COM series. So this is simply your on-off type 4 performance level E SIL 3 IP67 with the option for an IP69 housing. We'll talk about those accessories for the housings in a moment. Full end cap to end cap detection, so it's minimal dead zone. So the entirety of that lens is end cap to end cap protected height area. It does have an LED status end cap with multiple colors to indicate on and off, as well as some other functions. So it still has some full features to it for a simple on-off type of operation, and you have the ability to wire directly into the receiver, automatic reset or manual reset modes. The alignment aid upon startup includes the multicolor end cap to assist with your alignment upon startup, as well as it's Bluetooth enabled, and we'll talk about that at a little bit of length as well. And so minus 10 to plus 55 degrees. So you're looking at a protected height starting at 330 millimeters, upwards of all the way to 1930 millimeters with 14 millimeter resolution and 30 millimeter resolution being the most common and what we would typically stock in North America. And that range is typically 7 meters for your 14 millimeter resolution, 10 meters for the 30 millimeter resolution between the emitter and the receiver. And there's a high range option available at the 30 millimeter resolution to go from 8 meters to 30 meters. And then the light grid, we offer it in a 2, 3, and 4 beam array of 2 beams, 3 beams, 4 beams. Again, with a high range option there going upwards to 60 meters. And so providing you applications and welding systems, robot cells, edges of stations and train platforms, wood processing, safeguarding. You can introduce mirrors and you can safeguard multiple areas around a piece of equipment, making turns and corners. There is a limitation to the range. You're diminishing the range between the emitter and the receiver when you introduce mirrors, and there's calculations that we can advise to determine the appropriate light curtain or grid and what range you need to order to accommodate the perimeter lengths that you're looking at protecting. That's your SLC or SLG light curtain light grid 440 COM series. Then you move to the SLC, the full featured SLC 440 series. So here's your type 4 light curtain SLC or light grid SLG, performance level 3, SIL 3, excuse me, performance level E, SIL 3, IP67 with IP69 housings available. But now, more than just your on-off, now you've included your integrated blanking, fixed floating, and floating with fixed with movable edge detection, integrated double reset built into the unit, beam coating. So your beam coating allows that light curtain to be mounted in close proximity without crosstalk. and you can program that in. And onboard contactor control, so your onboard feedback monitoring loop, your downstream monitored motor control contactors and relays. Programming. Programming does not require software. Programming is done by a push button, either with a customized cable set that we have with a little push button on it, or you can wire in a simple push button into the receiver wiring when you're going to go in and do your programming. You can even use a contact lock. It's quite simple programming utilizing that action. A 7-segment display at the bottom of the unit. So you do not have end-to-end because you do have that 7-segment display, but the 7-segment display gives you operating status as well as error codes. So if you've made a mistake with your wiring, you're going to get error codes. If there's a mistake with any of the transmission of the emitter or the receiver, you're going to get error codes for very easy troubleshooting, as well as some LEDs that are on indicated with symbols on the 7-segment display. And of course, that LED and status end cap that will have multiple colors, and your onboard Bluetooth, which we will talk about in a couple of other slides. Minus 25 degrees upwards to plus 25 degrees for your ambient temperature area. Your protected height on the safety light curtain SLC 440 series goes from 170 millimeters up to 1930 millimeters. Again, with your 14 mil resolution or your 30 millimeter resolution, so finger or hand. 7 meters to 10 meters is your standard range, and we have high range. We even include the high range on the 14 millimeter resolution up to 10 meters, and for the 30 millimeter resolution up to 20 meters. So some great availability of different resolutions, different ranges, different protected heights to meet almost every single application that's out there. And they're like grids, again, your 2, 3, 4 beams. Upwards of 12 meters range, and then the high range goes upwards of 20 meters on the 440 series. Then we move up to the all-arounder. This is our SLC 445 series. So now incorporating all of the features we just mentioned on the previous slide for your 440 series, including now integrating the special muting functions, all of the muting functions we just discussed, with full muting kits available, integrated into the SLC or SLG, light curtain or light grid 445 series, including the special cyclic operation, that multi-scan, as well as the previous blanking and double reset and your onboard EDM, your 7-segment display, the LED end cap, status end cap, IP67. I forgot to fix this slide because there's also an IP69 housing available for the 445 series now as well. And protected heights from 170 millimeters upwards of 1770 millimeters. And again, offered with a light grid. The range on the light curtains up to 10 meters with 30 millimeter resolution. And there's a high range on your light grid for upwards of 20 meters of range between the emitter and receiver. So there are muting kits that are available for 2 and 4 beam setups, and they'll include all the double-ended connectors for quick and easy setup to the special MCU junction box that we show there on the slide next to the emitter and receiver. So the kits are quite easy to determine whether you need the two sensors or the 4 sensors, either in an L shape or a T shape. So all the bits and pieces will come with that, with the exception of a mounting stand. This mounting stand is sold separately if you need it for the muting sets. And so we've got some nice options there to mount directly to the sensor profile or to mount onto a mounting stand. And so you order your light curtain or grid, you order your muting sensor set. And so basically when you are looking at, for example, here, your transport out of the hazardous area with 2 muting sensors, everything in that photo is what comes into the box package for the muting sets. And then you can install that particular one on a mounting stand along with the light curtain itself. So very easy to kit. It's already an assembled kit and very easy to implement in the field. Some additional accessories that are out there are deflection mirrors and mounting posts or stands, protective housings for both the light curtains as well as for the mirrors themselves. Vibration dampeners are included once you reach oh, I've forgotten the I think it's 1,370 protected height that are included in the packaging. Anything shorter than that, you can order them as separate accessories. And then the IP69 rated housings are available for your SLC 440, the SLC 440 COM, as well as the 445 series. And let's talk about that now. Not just the curtains, but for the grids too. So on your SLC or SLG 440 series, your light curtain with the 7-segment display, you can have a polycarbonate plastic tube with stainless steel enclosure caps, which would be considered hygienic, or you have a PH, which is the polycarbonate plastic tubes with the polyamide enclosure caps. So they're shock and break and scratch resistant, membrane protection class IP69 with silicone O-rings. They avoid condensation due to temperature variations, and they're Ecolab certified. That's for the standard light curtain of the 440 series. We also offer just the plastic tubes with the polyamide enclosure caps for the 440 COM series. So both the light curtain and the light grid will allow for an IP69 protective enclosure. Again, Ecolab certified. Ecolab certified means that a third-party lab has tested our devices to, I think it's 5 or 6 typical cleaning agents that are either acidic-based or alkaline-based, and they can withstand those readily available cleaning agents. So when you order, basically when you order the IP69 enclosure, you're choosing your light curtain first. Then you're going to choose the part number for the protective tube and end caps, whether it's going to be stainless steel or the polyamide, depending upon the series and depending upon your needs. So you order the light curtain, you order the IP69 housing, and they are factory assembled. So easy and reliable cleaning with that shock-proof and scratch-resistant polyamide plastic housing. And it's a stainless steel type 316 end caps on the hygienic versions. Industrial areas with high cleaning requirements, applications for outside, your food and beverage industry. When you're looking without hygienic requirements, you can look at the plastic end caps. And then when you're looking at the SH, your stainless steel end caps there, you're going to look for anything that has a hygienic requirement. And again, that's the food and beverage, hygienic areas, clean and sterile rooms, packaging applications for pharmaceutical and hygiene products. So a plethora of applications for the IP69 enclosures. So here is what that would look like. The enclosure and the light curtain are ordered from the factory. The IP69 enclosure is not offered as a separate accessory, so the customer doesn't have to worry about assembling it and worrying that they're going to maintain and keep that IP69 rating, because it's done at the factory. And so again, you order light curtain or grid, you order the appropriate housing, and it comes completely delivered as your IP69 unit. And what's new now is that we are also now offering the stainless steel end caps for the 445 series, where we didn't offer that before. And so now you have your muting applications. If you have a muting application or the multi-scanning or the cyclic operation requirements, and you have an IP69 hygienic requirement, we offer the protective housing for that as well. So in similar fashion, you're going to order your light curtain, you're going to order your housing, and then it will be assembled. Both part numbers are labeled on the light curtain and the grid for replacement ease. The sensors must be installed vertically with a connecting cable pointing downward. So they're pre-wired with a length of cable, 10 meters of cable with a connector at the other end to wire into your electrical panel on all of our IP69 housings. And the little light barriers are also available in an IP69 housing. So giving you the same benefits as the stainless steel SH440 ER housing on the 440 series of light curtains and grids. So again, we are going to offer that on the SLB 440 series, a single light beam or safety light barrier series. And so there is a suffix for that. So depending upon which version that you get, There's a version here with the 1047 suffix that will have the an LST or an LSTH for the high range. And then there's also the 1049 suffix with 200 millimeters of cable with an M12 4-pin connection, where the other one had a longer cable length, but giving you options for the IP69 hygienic housing on the light beam. We talked about Bluetooth. The Bluetooth is integrated into the 440 series of light curtains and grids, as well as the 440 series of 440 COM series of light curtains and light grids. So it's the SLC Assist App that will give you information about the operating modes, the beam signal strength, your status of your OSSD safety outputs, the status of the protective field, the number of OSSD switches and the cycle counts, the number of times those outputs have been switched on and off, your supply voltage information, operating time. Most phones and tablets should be able to download in the appropriate store the SLC Assist app. And it's really neat. It gives you, there's a main menu. So as soon as you turn on your app, it will give you a listing of all the light curtains that are available for you to look at. So the type and the serial number of each one, as well as the Bluetooth signal strength. And whenever Bluetooth is activated on the light curtain, the end cap will go blue. You can rename them with individual device names, and that can be helpful when you're trying to find a specific light curtain. You can give it the name of the machine, you can give it a separate serial number, so it's quite customizable right from the main menu. And then the device configuration. So you'll see the functions which are enabled and which have been programmed in. You cannot program from the app. You must do the programming from the light curtain itself, but this is purely for diagnostic information and for visibility and signaling information. So you'll see if any of the blanking has been selected, if the beam coding was active, if the 7-segment display was flipped, because that's an option to flip that around if you need to mount the connector at the top instead of the bottom. So all that information, the device configuration, is immediately available to you once you've selected that particular part number or serial number. Then your device status will give you important information about the operating mode, the number of times, the status of the output and the cycle counter, how many times it's been cycled through, and what your supply voltage is, and number of hours of operating time is also included in the device status. And then you can also get a detailed view where you can look at the protective field beams, and you can see the quality of each light beam. You can see which beams are active and not active. So if the light curtain is tripped and you don't know why, it'll tell you it's beam number 57, and you can go back and you might see a scratch on the lens or a piece of dirt or a dead fly or something on the lens, and you can clean that very easily. And that OSSD counter, you can schedule the service cycles for the safety controller. And with the total operating time, the customer can plan periodic inspection cycles of that light curtain. So really enhanced diagnostic information and device status is available to you in the app. And then the interruption of the protected field is shown in real time. And all this information can be archived. You can permanently archive that information, and it helps with documentation, especially after any functional or periodic inspections, and it can be downloaded to your device and sent by email, and you can save it to your company server in case of error messages. And as a general support, you can also access the operating manual directly from the app, and that's shown here on the next slide, because there have been some app updates. So yes, the new functions to determine safe distance calculations are now included into the app, as well as product selection according to the AOPD functions and the link to the online catalog page. So let's get to some applications, because this was what we all wanted to see, right? To hear about some real life cases and some real life applications. So I've got a few of them here to show you, and I wanted to make sure I got through all that great information about understanding our safety light curtains and the key terminology and all the product offering that we have. There's just not enough time in an hour to get to it all. But some applications that we have, I want to show you a few pictures and maybe a few videos. This one was in the wood processing, the timber industry. And so this was a wood products company with more than 60 facilities spread out across North America and across Europe. They produce lumber, engineered wood, plywood and particle board, and other products including pulp and newsprint, wood chips, used in home construction, repair, remodeling, and all of that, paper, tissue, and box materials. So this particular mill produces building lumber, and they wanted to be able to track the downstream flow of the logs for production purposes. They wanted to know when a log was passing certain points in their production to ensure they were meeting their production goals. The customer did have some concerns about the cradling for the logs and that it might trigger a light curtain. So we talked about fixed blanking with them, and they decided to give it a try. They'd monitor the safety outputs. If it was at high at 24 volts, there would be no log present. And if it was 0 volts, then the log would be present. And as the logs passed, the PLC would calculate the flow rate. So we offered them our standard SLC 440, which allows them to program in simply the fixed blanking. And they were looking at a brand called Telco measuring light curtains that offered parallel and cross scanning beaming, parallel and cross scanning beams to determine the location of the log and how many logs are going through. We got the order because we had the light curtains on the shelf. We could meet their installation time frame. Telco had a 2-month lead time, and they also realized that the light curtains were overkill for what they were trying to monitor. So they were simply able to utilize our standard light curtain, program in the blanking, and this is what, hold on here, there we go. So when a log passed through, it would interrupt the beams, the end cap would go red, and they would determine that the log was there, and then when the log wasn't present, the light curtain was active again, green, so they were able to count when the logs were passing. Another application is a robotic application, a muting application, including our SATEC modular fencing. So here they were taking their first step into robotics, a manufacturing facility, and they were not sure how to manage the safety portion of their first robot install. So they were looking at hard guarding, so a full SATEC enclosure, our SLC 445 muting sensors, several AZM 201 series door handle solenoid interlocking devices at the movable openings, safety controllers, and other various accessories to go along with all those devices. We were able to demonstrate our expertise in robotic safety applications and offer a complete solution in a timely manner. So all the hard guarding, all the installation accessories, all the components. Having a complete solution was a major advantage compared to the competition. But we had a timely response from our first visit to the full proposal, and that prevented the competitors from getting involved. And then continued communication throughout the phases, all the phases of the project, kept the customer satisfied with our exceptional service. With assistance from our engineering support team and from our mechanical design team of SATEC for integration with the robot controller as well, that was the final piece that cemented us as an authority in safety and integration, I'm pleased to say. So they utilized that full Schmersal solution, including our 445 series with the muting sensors. And so they allowed the customer to pass the conveyor through the opening with uniform thermos molded parts through an enclosure where the robot was able to pick and place the parts throughout the process. The conveyor in-feed greatly increased their throughput, removing the necessity to shut down the robot to load the parts. Though there was a gap in the guarding, the easy muting and the easy muting offerings that we offer in the SLC 445 allowed them to maintain that higher safety rating and minimizing any bottlenecks in their production. Here we have a refractory with on-site mining operations. This is a 1,500-acre refractory that has 575 permitted on-site mining acres, research and development buildings, and operations facilities. The main production area is hot and dirty, densely packed with all kinds of heavy-duty equipment a mix of AC and DC motors and drives. It was a very electrically noisy environment as well. They were originally using light curtains that were from Allen Bradley. That was a universal, the 450L, their universal transceiver module that accepts transmitter receiver plug-in modules, or they were using the Omron MiniSafe of various sizes and resolutions, but they were having problems with tripping issues on both the Allen Bradley and the Omron due to interference, due to EMI noise. The light curtains would trip and require reset intermittently, sometimes multiple times a day, sometimes multiple times an hour. They tried the most common fixes with shielded cable, trying to isolate all the control cables, separate conduit runs, trying to avoid parallel cable runs. They were swapping out transmitters and receiver mounting locations, but we gave them an SLC 440 COM to test it out, and they temporarily installed that in place of one of the Allen Bradley and one of the Omron light curtains. And after 2 weeks of testing, they didn't experience a single trip of the light curtains from Schmersal. So our primary selling point was the ability to perform in an environment with a great deal of electromagnetic interference. And they also liked the fact we showed them a little piece, and we have those pieces for you, the cutaway sample of our unibody construction and our robust housing, giving you that lighter weight, but not allowing it to be flexing and offer torsion as the competitors do. They noticed that they had a good amount of flex and torsion in the Allen Bradley and the Omron light curtains when they started working with anything that was over 5 feet tall, as well as multiple failures due to damage from the weak housing design. So that was a key selling point for us as well, that our unibody construction, even though it's a lighter weight light curtain, it's a more robust, mechanically strong light curtain. And the Bluetooth app. The Bluetooth app allowed the customer they were used to using a laser alignment when installing the light curtains, and then having to go back to the instructions and go back and forth to the different displays. So our SLC Assist app provided them with a user-friendly alignment tool, along with the onboard alignment tools to our light curtain itself, and gave them quick explanations of any of the errors right from the phone app. So immediately they bought 10 sets of light curtains in the last 4 months. Here we're just showing the robot picking that very hot molten piece of something. Not quite sure what they're mining. We try to keep that information proprietary, but just a little snippet there. And then how can Schmersal help? We're going to close out the day here. How can we help you? So I put these questions up here again, the typical questions to help, to help you identify the proper light curtain. So we've got a number of tools and a number of different services available to help you with that. And in doing so, we can offer our Technicum engineering services with stop time analysis, with the risk assessment, a collaborative robot risk assessment, and as well as various trainings that are offered, general machine safety, ISO 13849 training, safety circuits and wiring training, risk assessment, CE conformity, OSHA outreach. Through our technical engineering safety services, we can provide the technical planning and the engineering necessary to calculate the safety distances for various guarding systems that will include light curtains. So this is why I mentioned this here, because we have an entire engineering services division that will help you. We're here to help, as well as our application engineers that can help with all those questions that are pertinent to the selection of light curtains. We can help with our engineering safety services. And so we've got some resources. You can go visit our website and directly reach out to the engineering services group. We've got a complete brochure. With our engineering portion, we can provide expertise for every life cycle phase of machine and plant construction involved in the design of new machinery and process, and the retrofitting of safety functions during the modernization of older machines. We can perform the stop time measurements to calculate the safety distances for those guarding systems and carry out the validation of the safety functions and provide the necessary documentation. So for example, the stop time analysis measurements according to ISO 13855 that we talked about earlier today. And integration. Our specialists can be involved with the planning of fixed or moving protective equipment or complete machine housings tailored to the individual requirements of the respective industry and relevant company. Throughout our nationwide network of integrators, we can oversee the installation of individual safety components, including the wiring, configuration of programming, and the integration of the safety controllers and safety PLCs. So for example, any machine safety upgrades. So we've got some little tech briefs and a little single page and a complete brochure of our Technicum engineering services, as well as our general information and available literature on our brochures for machine guarding safety products, our safety light curtains with Bluetooth interface, our optoelectronic safety guard catalog, and we have some tech briefs and some technical articles. We have an entire technical article on the selection guidelines for safety light curtains. So again, all this information is available at our website, www.schmersalusa.com, and as well as just reaching out to us by phone, the old-fashioned way, through our chat online, on our website, on our online product catalog, reaching out to us. We're here and we're happy to help. So I want to thank everyone for their participation today, and I hope that everyone has a safe day.